and welcome everyone. It's just boom, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Consciousness Road Trip. I'm your host, Sarah Watt, and I'm joined by a fellow Australian today, sitting in my hotel room in Vienna, Austria, Mr. Simon Fooks.
Hey everybody.
Welcome, Simon. Thank you for being here. So, we've just been in a couple of classes in a row together, actually, Access Consciousness classes. We've just done a relationship, done different class here with Simone and Brendan, and before that we were in Rome for a choice of possibilities, and before that we were both in a business, done different class with Simone in Hamburg. So,
and the brilliance class.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's like 3 days into February 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, wow.
It's
yeah,
been
right.
a little bit of a pow, wham, bam start to the year.
Yeah.
So we were talking before the podcast, what are we going to talk about? And, often you start with something and it goes anywhere anyway. But I think, Simon, since I've known you, something that's always been a little bit of a mystery for me with you, actually, is you as a businessman.
Yep.
And I know you are a successful businessman. I know you've had great success in what you do. And, so when you said, let's talk about business, I was like, great. What is business to you?
That's a great freaking question. I mean, I don't know what business is to me. It's business. I love doing business. I love making money. That's that's really what drives me with my business. I love creating, and I love just instituting new stuff, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what I believe is possible and what I know to be possible, and So
what is your business? You probably do a bunch of things, but if you your main, main jam, your main income, what is that derived from? Or
that's from selling crystals. Yeah.
Cool.
Selling gems and stuff. Yeah.
And for people that don't really know, because in my mind, I mean, I loved crystals growing up, and you'd get them at the markets or you'd buy them in a store, but you don't have any of that, right?
We've got a website and we do pop-up shops.
Nice.
Yeah. I've gone through that whole journey of going to markets and selling, and that was the beginnings of the business. This business has been going on and off for 20 years, and I started at markets, and then the business grew to the point where it took me too long to set up at a market. So it was just I don't want to do this, and I got sick of making little amounts of money. So I just went, I've got to do something that no one else is doing, and I've got to think in the ways that no one else is thinking. And then that's when we started going into pop-ups and then online stuff. And there's people already kind of doing that, and there's people following the ideas that I've created with it. So
cool.
Yeah, and now pushing the boundaries of what else is possible with it all. Now it's we're taking it to a rebranding and just wanting to take it into places and just create more and more and more money, and just create a lifestyle that fucking inspires the shit out of me. Yeah.
Cool. And growing up and stuff like that, what was your where did you learn about business from? Is it something that you've just always been interested in? Like you said, you love making money, and where would you say that spark came from?
I'd say my parents, they had a business, but they didn't seem like they loved making money.
Uh-huh.
I never got that sense, but they were always trying to hide whatever they did have. I remember actually finding thousands of dollars in the freezer when I was a kid and stealing a few. But I think it's just something that I started with and then wrestled with. But as soon as when I would generate money, wealth, I'd get really fucking excited. And then I was okay, cool. I made $800 today. What if I can create $1,000 today? So I constantly pushed that benchmark with myself and was
cool.
What else can I create now? What else can I create now? And that's
cool.
What really excites me is the money, as well as creating more and pushing what I know I can do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that, when you were saying that then about that whole thing of making money and then using that as a motivation or whatever, that generative and creative energy to make more. I remember when I first came along to Access, and one of the early conversations having with Simone, and she still talks about it now in a lot of her Joy Business and Getting Out of Debt Joyfully classes, is this thing of having your own financial reality. And I remember, because it's similar to me, I grew up in a household where my my parents worked a lot, but they didn't enjoy it. It was more this place of like, this is what you have to do to get by. This is what I need to do to make this much money and blah, blah, blah. And when I always knew I had a different reality around finances and around working. Like I knew what my mum chose wasn't really true for me. And I remember then hearing Simone call it, your financial reality. I was like, what the hell? Like you can actually just choose and create something totally different to anyone else and based on what is fun and what works for you. So like when you mentioned that then about like having this place of when money comes into your world, you use it as a way to create more and to create greater. Like what would you say now? Like, do you have a sense of what your financial reality is? Or is there a space where like that changes a lot for you or?
I don't really like what I want to create. I don't get what that sentence means. Like my financial reality is that like I get the sense like the universe wants to contribute shitloads of money to me.
Cool.
So I'm in a space of like, how do I receive everything that they actually want to gift me? And my point of view is with money is that it does want to come to me. Yep. It's the only thing that stops it is me and my points of views. And so I'm working on like dissolving as many barriers as I have to actually that receiving.
Cool.
Yeah, because I get that I can. And it's really interesting when I met Gary Douglas, the first thing he said to me was, you could be making a lot of money. And I didn't ask him a question after that. So I'm still kind of like, I've got to ask him that question. But that's my sense. And people have told me this my whole life. And I went through a period where I lived in a tent for like 2 years. I couldn't afford to feed myself for 3 days. And that's still part of my motivation where I'm like, when I restarted my business, where I said, when I create this, I actually want to get paid. I actually want to make fucking money. And I said to the universe, whatever this is, I actually want to get my worth. And I did a Facebook post recently on it too, which was like, I want to actually receive my value. And it's been interesting how the business has like been created, and within a year it turned into a full-time job, and now it's turned into a thing where I'm employing other people. So and it just wants to keep growing and growing. So I'm doing my best to keep up with it and not sabotage it. Yeah.
And I mean, even the type of business you're in, being like crystals and that sort of metaphysical world where I guess like not many people have the point of view that your financial reality should be one of receiving abundance, the universe providing. Like generally it's almost the opposite to that maybe. And that's where with your financial reality, and like maybe you guys listening as well, if it's something that you've never heard that term before, or like what if you started asking yourself like, what is my financial reality? And it might not be something that comes so clearly straight away. And it might not be, like you said, you don't even know what that sentence means. Like people hear, what is your financial reality? But the words that came out of your mouth after I asked you that question was a reality that like is yours. No one else would sit there and say that. Whereas most people in this reality, when you say, what's your financial reality? Well, I want to put away a certain percent for when I retire, and I want to have this much in my savings. And like their financial reality is very much structured around
boring as shit.
Yeah, but like, also like the lifespan of us. Like this place of like you go to university and in that time you don't earn a lot of money, but then you start earning more money and then it puts away for retirement and you buy property and you have a family, and it's like you get a sense of where most people in this world function from financially in their reality. But then talking to people like you where it's like, number one, you've probably never asked yourself that question or not in that way. I think it really starts to give other people a sense of what else is possible with that.
Yeah.
And also like the fact that you don't have to have a financial reality based on anyone else's or what anyone has ever told you. Yeah.
It's really interesting because when I did start the business and the business started growing, and then I was aware of a lot of people's judgments about like, I just want enough, their point of view was, I just want enough money to survive. And I was like, when I heard that, and I was aware of everyone judging me for wanting to create more and wanting money, it was like, I was like, F that. I actually want a shitload of money. Like I actually desire to have money, because money does give us a lot of freedom to be able to like live a lifestyle that we're both kind of living, where we're like traveling the world and we're creating what we want. We can go shopping and and then I'm always asking for more. Like I'd love to live a lifestyle where I just kind of fly somewhere and I'm like, see that house over there? I'd like to buy that house.
Yeah.
And just love to have that reality of like, because that would be fun for me. That would be so much fun for me of like having so much money that you're like, I might fly across the world today and do whatever. So
yeah. And I think like the more you're willing to like be outlandish almost in how you look at your financial reality, the more you're willing to just be like, there are no barriers or walls to what's possible.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're going to create it all like overnight or in a year. Like it might take some time, it might not. But to have a place where, like most people would just so poo-poo all of that. They would be like, you know, you need to win the lottery or you need to be like in a CEO's role for 5 years or something to ever be like in a position to have that level of financial prosperity or availability. But like, what if just that space of even being willing to go there and ask for it is what starts to create that change for it as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's like you have to be willing to be honest with yourself about what you want to create.
Yeah.
And then like in that space of like, shit, I actually wouldn't mind that as my reality. The universe can kind of contribute to you, but they're always contributing to you exactly what you're asking for. So, and this might be a bit challenging for some, but it's like, they will give you exactly what you're asking for. Yep. So if you believe you're worth fucking nothing and that you don't want to create money, well, that's going to be your reality. But if you believe and you want to create, then the universe will always contribute exactly what you're asking for, which is so cool. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say something then, but then it totally slipped my mind because I was just like, just absolved in that energy of like, just how much the universe is willing to contribute to us, but also like that place where, that's what I was going to say as well. Let's talk about money and receiving, like how, like, what does that mean to you, money and like what it means to receive?
Oh, geez.
Like, do you get a sense, like, you know, even where, like, and what we're talking about here, a lot of the tools that we talk about come from Access Consciousness. So if you're hearing this podcast somewhere randomly and you've not heard my podcast before, you can find out more at accessconsciousness.com. But I know, like, growing up, I never thought of money as a way to, like, the more I'm willing to receive, potentially the more money that I'm going to start receiving because it's part of that, right?
Yeah.
Like there's this place, and it might not be cash money. It might be like, you know, how many times do you go out to dinner or you go have coffee with someone and someone says, let me pay for it. Like you get that, no. Like there's that thing of like, that to me is like that place where you also can start to play with the energy of the more you're willing to receive, the more the universe is actually going to be willing to gift to you as well.
Yeah. I remember being at it was like a shareholders or some kind of like stock market investment thing years ago.
Yeah.
And the guy said to me, he said like, I'm asking for money to show up. So if I'm like walking down the street and I see 5 cents on the ground, I'm going to pick it up because if I don't, then it's like me saying to the universe, I don't want to receive. So anytime that happens, I like, and my barriers come up or my points of view come up or whatever it is, and I'm like, if a lady turns to me and says, hey, I'll pay for this, I'm like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, you know what, I'd actually really like to receive it.
Yeah.
And it's also like, well, from my point of view, it's just like a willingness and a vulnerability to actually receive from people. Yeah. And
like looking at changing that as well, like where you said there and how we said, and I know like when I first came into Access or whatever, like I first started to actually acknowledge the availability of things changing so easily and so quickly, where you would come, like if I would have heard something like this and I'd be like, well, where the fuck do I start? Like, what do I do here? Like exactly what you said then. What if it was just a matter of every time something like that comes up where someone offers you anything, and it doesn't have to be about money, where someone offers to open the door for you or to pick something up or whatever, buy you a coffee, that the minute that like wonkiness comes into your world, that just to be present with it and ask for it to change.
Yeah.
And it can be that easy with money as well. Like the moment you're in a whatever situation and there's a wonky energy, to be there with it.
Yeah.
And to ask for something different to show up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I loved what you were saying as well about the guy being like, you know, every time he sees money or there's an opportunity to take it, like to get it, that you would go there. I remember being a kid when, you know, like as a child, we don't have all of the stuff as adults that we have around what we've learned and what we've done with money. As a kid, I was like a magnet for money.
Yeah, right.
I remember being in the shopping centre one day looking down and there was just this wad of cash on the ground that I picked up. It was like $600. And then I remember being at the beach one day and this wallet just floating past me. It had like $500 in it. Just being on a bus and reaching in the seat and finding like piles of $2 coins. And,
yeah, wow.
And like having this place where, because I didn't have a point of view that, oh, money had to come from a certain place.
Yeah.
It would just show itself to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool too. That's something that's like a lot of people kind of get stuck in.
Yep.
Is we tend to kind of go, I only receive money from my job. Yeah. I can only receive $500 a week.
Yep.
And they get so used to that point of view that that's all you can receive. But it's like, if you have that point of view, money can show up anywhere.
Yeah.
How fucking cool is that? Like, and what can actually show up? Like, what can contribute to you if you're prepared, if you're willing to receive that too. Yeah. So that's really, that's like a big key for me too. Yeah. Is like going, I have a business that can receive the money, but then I've been asking, well, how many other ways can I actually receive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at some of the tools, and like, if I put you on the spot here, sorry, but some of the tools that are available in Access and the ones that have changed this stuff for you the most, do you have something that comes to mind where...
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
There's so many wicked tools there, right? Yeah. It's like interesting point of view. I have this point of view has been amazing. It's been such a phenomenal tool lately where it's like every time I have a point of view, I just become aware that it's just one choice. And it's like any point of view is a limitation if you're choosing to only receive from one point of view. But if you can kind of be aware of like, okay, wait a second, if it's just... If I'm saying I can only receive money from my business, it's like I limit that. So it's like, what space can I be to receive from everywhere? But it's like being willing to change that point of view and saying, how many other fucking people have points of views about money that they receive money all the time too? So it's like not wanting to ever create a limiting point of view, but only points of views that are going to create more in my life and my world.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think like as well from saying that too, because again, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, where do I start? Like, I remember when I started out with a lot of this stuff, like pick something really basic, like interesting point of view tool, write it on like a post-it note or have it in your phone so it pops up like as a reminder every hour or something like that. And the thing I found the easiest with changing things in my life that I knew wasn't working. Like obviously if you're listening to this podcast or you're someone out there that's looking at different things in the world, it might not necessarily be that anything in your life's particularly bad, but maybe there's a space where there's a sense of something greater being available, something different available with money, something different available with your relationships, with work, with whatever that is. And I mean, that's why I started this podcast, I guess, and that's why I keep choosing what I choose in my life and keep asking for more, because I've always known that there's something else available in this world. And the thing I've found that's closest to matching that awareness is what I've found in Access Consciousness and in the tools that are available. So, but I know when I just get that there's a lot of people starting out possibly on this journey. And even if you're not, even if you're listening to this and you've been doing Access and choosing greater and different things for years and years, like some of these like basic quote unquote tools are the ones that also change the most for me every single day.
For sure.
And that interesting point of view one is like, and you don't even really need to get a sense of it right away of what you're even saying. It's like all of the tools in Access. Like when you find money or something shows up and you say like, how does it get any better than this?
Yeah.
Or when something shit happens and you say, how does it get any better than
this?
Yeah. It's not having a cognitive outcome in mind. It's just changing the energy from one thing to something else. So yeah, if you guys are listening to this and you hear a couple of these tools, like what if you were willing to just play with some of them and choosing interesting point of view, for instance, and just having it there that every time something comes up and you remember, just say it. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view, and be present with like the possibility of whatever is showing up.
Yeah.
Being able to be changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't actually have to do access to use the tools.
Not at all.
You can just kind of do them and be them and then see what it actually creates.
Yep.
And yeah, that's really cool. That's the gift in that. But for what I found for me personally is the more, which is why people see me at a lot of classes, is the more I choose, the more awareness I have, and the more my world expands. And yeah, it's just like it's been such a gift in my life and such a gift in your life.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone that I know is just like ridiculously grateful for their life and from the tools from Access and like the founders that also created it, kind of thing. And it's just we're all creating this phenomenal life that we kind of like honestly turn around half the time is like, can you pinch me right now? Because I don't even know what country I'm going to next week.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, how amazing is this lifetime, and how does it get better than that? Like, it's constantly like, Jesus, what else can I choose here? What else can I create here? Or so I mean, it's been a gift, but you don't have to choose it. You get to choose whatever the heck you want. Yeah. But
that's amazing. And so, speaking about different countries and waking up in different cities every other day, what's happening next in Simon Land, in Simon World?
I'm heading to Australia after this.
Oh my God.
Australia. I'm heading for a few weeks to go and see my little boy, and then hopefully get some surfing time. You never know. And then I might head back to Europe for a few Access classes. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
that's another
following the
thing
energy.
I enjoy about you so much. Is because I mean, I plan a little bit ahead, but for you, I'm like, oh, so what flight are you catching? Oh, I don't know. It's fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And I'm just like, it's funny when I go to book tickets, I'm like, I'll just book a one way because I don't get the sense to like book the next part of it, kind of thing. Or I'm just like so open to following wherever I get pinged to go.
Cool.
And that's how I've created my business too, and my life is like, I just had a sense of the energy of what I wanted to create with my business, and now I just follow the energy and kind of go, okay, that's pinging with me because that kind of resonates with what I want to create, and that does and that doesn't, kind of thing. So, and it's also like I have a big willingness to try anything and to see what the heck happens. Like, it's not always going to work out for me. It's like when you're doing deals over the internet and buying crystals, I don't always get good stuff, but I'm still willing to receive, and then just, if I stuff it up, I stuff it up, but I'll survive, I'll keep going, and I can keep creating from there. So,
and it's also like, that's where as well, like, and I know we've been going for a little while, but it's so hard to stop talking about some of this stuff too, but like growing up, I was always taught that there was a right choice and a wrong choice. Like the outcome was going to either be a good outcome or a bad outcome, or somewhere in between, whatever. But the other cool thing, and what just came up then as well with what you were saying about just choosing and being willing to receive what that choice creates, there's an awareness that comes out of every choice we make as well. Like if that awareness comes because you get ripped off on a deal, or, you book a cheap flight and it gets cancelled, through that awareness that shows up from that choice, you start to become this place of being willing to be more aware of what your choices are creating as well. So I just wanted to quickly mention as well that thing about how much choice creates awareness.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes out of this like right and wrong mentality or space with choice, and it becomes just this place of like really every choice contributing to more choice and more awareness and more showing up. And so much has let me off the hook, at least somewhat, in judging myself on things, because I'm like, well, what awareness did I gain out of this?
Yeah. Your brother said the other day in class, Brendan Watt, in case you don't know, is there are no right or wrong choices. There's only an awareness waiting to happen.
Oh,
and that's
wow, I didn't hear that.
That's right.
Great. Yeah.
And there was such a cool space, because I still go into, I don't want to make the right choice or the wrong choice. Well, I want to make the right choice, but you know what I mean? Like whatever is kind of going to line my pocket with money or whatever it is, but it's like, we get really stuck in it. And it's like, it was really interesting hanging out with someone the other day, and they were like, well, I just like whatever that experience was, it created more awareness for me.
Yep.
And so it wasn't a right or a wrong, and it wasn't comfortable, but it created more awareness for me. So
Yep.
I'm actually grateful for that. So it's like, what if we could be grateful for everything that shows up in our life too?
Yeah.
And
and how much is an awareness worth? Like, you know, sometimes we might be like, oh, well, that turned out bad financially for me. And what if the awareness you gained out of it was worth 50, 100, 1 million times the dollar amount that you might have lost through that decision as well? Like, I've had so many people talk to me about, oh, I did this and I lost money, or I chose this and this person ripped me off. And I'm like, yeah, but you now have an awareness. Like, what did you gain from that? An awareness that you'll never go to that energy and choose that again. And I mean, if you do, you do as well. But if you choose to actually go to what you're aware of from something, that's when it becomes like this invaluable tool.
Yeah, superpower. Yeah.
Cool. Well, there we go. 25 minutes. Boom.
That's how it's done, son.
That's how it's done, son.
Can I say something too? There was this really cool exercise that I learnt years ago, which people can try too, which is like the thing with gifting and receiving and seeing where you're at. And what we did is one of my lifestyle coaching teachers said years ago, he said, what I want you to do is walk around the streets and try and give away money.
Yep.
Well, not try and, but give away money, whether it's $5, $100, however much you want. And then just be willing to be aware of what people are willing to receive.
Yep.
And just being aware of like, oh, okay, this is me like willing to not let go, but like to give away money and how much people can receive. And then being willing to ask people for stuff, or like going to a coffee shop and go, hey, would you mind giving me a coffee for free or something like that?
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. What came up for me was I was trying to give out like $5. It took me like 20 minutes to give away $5.
Yeah.
Because I was like, excuse me, can you take this money? And everyone was like, no, I don't want to receive. And I was like, holy shit, how is that people's points of views where they don't fucking want to receive money? And it was interesting. As I was telling my friend about the exercise, he's like, I want to give you $20. And I was like, no. I was like, oh shit, okay. So it's just so interesting what it actually creates, and like where you start to see your judgments or your points of views about what you can receive and what you can give to people too. So yeah, that was a really cool place that if people want to have a play with, it's something really cool to do. So
there you go, kids. Home play.
Yeah.
Get out there and it doesn't have to be money either. I mean, there's a class in Access where they do something similar where you've got to go out and try and get a no on something. So you go out and ask people for things and see where you can get to with them being willing to give to you before they say no to you.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so people were like, you know, someone went up to someone and they were eating French fries and they're like, oh, hey, can I have a chip? Can I have some fries? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, oh, thank you so much. Can I buy you a drink? And the person's like, no.
Yeah.
Like how much people are willing for you to take from them. But when it comes to them actually receiving something from you, like it can be like that whole thing as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's sorry.
No, go.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I looked at this for a long time and I still look at this as like, when I go to someone's house, they're like, can I get you a drink or something to eat? I automatically go into my mum's point of view of like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to receive, like, I'm fine. What do you want? Like, and it's so interesting, like the willingness to sometimes say, yeah, can I have a glass of water or can I have an apple or something? Yeah. And it's like, it might not seem much to some people, but to other people, it's like, yeah, it kind of changes the universe about like, what can I actually receive here? So it's just really, it's a really cool thing. I mean, awareness is just this crazy trip that if you choose to be like aware of all your points of views, you just allow a space to create something completely different in your world, and you can change and mutate and whatever. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on here. And I feel like we could stop and then start another one. And,
yeah.
And let's do that too. And thank you guys for listening. And if you, how do people find you? Do you have a website?
I got a Facebook page.
Yeah, that works. So is it a business one or just your personal one? Simon Fooks.
No, there's a business one, just Simon Fooks. Yeah. I think
Fooks.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And he lives in Australia.
When I'm in Australia, I live in Australia.
Like me. Yeah. So if you guys want to hit up Simon and buy some crystals or find out more about Access Consciousness, are you facilitating any classes, Simon? Or?
I'm doing a telecall coming up soon, which is like on sexual healing.
Cool.
I'm doing classes. I don't know.
Maybe a foundation you and I have talked
yeah,
about.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'm down for creating anything if people want it. Yeah.
Cool. So thank you everyone for listening, and whatever you're choosing today, have way too much fun, make way too much money, and then ask for more. Thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next episode of Consciousness Road Trip.
Woo woo.